We used to joke that we were the most functional couple out of all our friends. Maya would say it half serious, usually with a glass of wine in one hand and her legs tucked under her on the couch, eyes rolling as someone else told us about yet another breakup or roommate meltdown. I'd laugh and agree, because it was mostly true. We paid our bills, cooked dinner at least 3 times a week, argued without shouting, and still had inside jokes even after 3 years together. Then she quit her job. It was a Tuesday. I remember because I had back-to-back client calls and didn't even get a chance to eat lunch until 3:45. When I finally emerged from my little office nook, Maya was sitting on the kitchen floor, barefoot, sipping tea like she was meditating. She looked up and said, "I left the agency today." No preamble. No warning. I blinked. What? She smiled like she just donated a kidney to save a child. I couldn't keep doing it. The endless campaigns, the pressure, the meaningless metrics. I need space. I need to figure out who I really am. I sat down, still holding my half-warm sandwich. Okay, so, do you have a plan? Maya shook her head, calm as ever. No. That's the point. I'm letting go of structure. Surrendering. She'd been reading a lot of self-help books lately. Listening to podcasts about intentional living, unstructured joy, and spiritual rewilding. I didn't hate it, hell, some of it was interesting, but this wasn't just a yoga retreat. We had rent. We had groceries. We had a joint savings account with $6,300 in it. I didn't say anything then. Just nodded. Said I was happy for her if she was happy. But something knotted in my stomach that didn't untangle. The first week was okay. Maya was radiant. She painted again. She read all day. Took long walks. Cooked more than usual. She kept calling it her soft era, and posted an Instagram story with just that caption and a sunbeam streaking across our living room floor. People loved it. Her DMs blew up. "You're glowing. So inspired by you. Tell me how to do it too." But while she floated, I was sinking. My job had picked up speed, Q3 was always hell, and I was working late most nights. She'd greet me with candles and incense and something plant-based simmering on the stove, and I'd fake a smile while silently checking the remaining balance on our shared checking account. At the end of the month, I asked casually, "Hey, do you have your half of the rent ready?" She blinked. "Oh. I thought maybe you could cover it, just for now." I froze. Just for now? I mean, I left to reconnect with myself. It doesn't really make sense to jump right into another job. That's not the point of this. I didn't say anything. I think I just stared at her. My silence must have said enough because she stood, gently picked up her teacup, and walked away. That night, I paid the rent alone. And I didn't sleep. A week later, things got weirder. Our mutual friends Sam and Danny, the couple we always joked were us in reverse, broke up. Sort of. We were at a small gathering in their apartment, the 4 of us plus maybe 2 others. Danny wasn't drinking. Sam was drinking too much. At one point, Danny pulled me aside. "He cheated," she said, flatly. While I was visiting my sister in Boston. My jaw tensed. Jesus. I'm sorry. He says it didn't mean anything. That he was drunk. That he was lonely. She stared down at her wine glass. But we were supposed to be planning a life together. Later that night, Maya and I sat in the Uber, quiet. Then she said, "Do you think what Sam did is unforgivable?" I turned to her, startled. What? I mean, people make mistakes. Especially when they're lost. It's not always black and white. I frowned. He cheated. That's not a gray area. She didn't answer. I stared out the window and realized I didn't like the direction any of this was going. The next morning, she meditated. I did the dishes. Neither of us talked about the rent. But I knew I couldn't avoid it forever. And I didn't know what would hurt worse, asking again, or hearing her say no. The second time I asked her about rent, it was 2 days before the due date. I had rehearsed the conversation in my head for hours, on the train, in the shower, while brushing my teeth. I tried on different tones, casual, concerned, frustrated. Nothing felt right. Everything made me sound like the villain in a coming-of-age indie film where the free-spirited artist gets suffocated by her logical, uptight boyfriend. But we couldn't keep ignoring it. So when Maya came in from a long walk, cheeks flushed, carrying wildflowers she said she felt called to pick, I swallowed my anxiety and just said it. "Have you thought about how you're going to cover your half of the rent this month?" She was placing the flowers into a jar. Her back stayed turned. "I haven't really figured that out yet." I waited. Then she turned, slowly. "But, you're making enough, right?" That line hit me like a slap. It wasn't cruel, it wasn't shouted, but it sliced. Not just the words, but the assumption behind them. That because I could, I should. "Maya," I said, my voice lower than I expected, "we agreed, from day one, to split rent evenly. We budgeted for 2 incomes. I didn't sign up to bankroll your spiritual sabbatical." Her expression shifted, soft to hard, like a shutter clicking closed. "Wow," she said. "So now I'm a burden?" "No. But you're putting me in a position where I either drain our savings or go into debt while you find yourself. That's not partnership. That's something else." She didn't cry. Maya rarely did. She just nodded, once, and walked out of the apartment without saying another word. I didn't know where she went. Hours passed. I made dinner. Didn't eat. Paced the apartment. Tried watching TV, then turned it off after 10 minutes. At 10:48 p.m., she came home smelling like lavender and cigarette smoke. Her hoodie was on backward. "I stayed with Danny," she said simply. "We made tea." She gets it. I didn't ask what Danny, who had just been cheated on by someone who also claimed to be emotionally lost, got about this situation. But I nodded. I was too tired to fight. And even more tired of being the only one worrying about everything. Things didn't exactly recover. Maya stopped bringing up the rent altogether. It became this invisible tension that sat between us on the couch, stood next to us at the sink, curled up at our feet while we slept. She'd leave early, go to yoga or sound healing workshops or long walks by the river. I'd wake up, work 10 hours, and come home to a version of her that felt increasingly out of sync with me. The intimacy changed too. We weren't fighting, but we weren't really touching either. Everything felt muted. One night, she came back from a workshop buzzing with energy. She tried to tell me about some breathwork technique that unlocked a memory from a past life. I nodded, half listening, while clearing emails from my phone. She stopped mid-sentence. "You don't hear me anymore, do you?" I looked up. "I hear you, Maya. I just don't always understand you." She blinked, slowly. "Maybe you're not trying hard enough." That hurt. But I said nothing. Because part of me wondered if she was right. 2 days later, Danny came over. She looked off. Not the usual composed version of her. She was wearing sweatpants, hair pulled back with a scrunchie, no makeup. She asked if Maya was home. I said no. She sat on the edge of the couch and whispered, "Sam's trying to get back together." I sighed. I thought they were done. They are. But he came by yesterday. Said he wants to talk. That he made a mistake. I hesitated. "Are you going to?" She looked away. "I don't know. I'm tired of being alone. And part of me thinks, maybe I wasn't enough. Maybe that's why he did it." I shook my head. "Don't go there. You are not the reason he cheated." She gave a half smile. "Thanks." Maya said the same. Though, she also said something weird. "What?" She said, "Sometimes betrayal cracks us open. Like maybe it needed to happen for us to wake up." I didn't know what to say. That sounded like something Maya would say. Like something she'd read on a mindfulness blog. And it scared me a little. The next rent cycle came faster than expected. Again, nothing from Maya. No discussion. No plan. So I didn't pay it. Just to see. The landlord called me 3 days later. Said the payment was missing. That we'd have a late fee. That this wasn't like us. I paid it. But the resentment didn't vanish. It calcified. That night, I didn't wait for Maya to bring it up. I did. We need to talk. Seriously. I can't keep covering for you. It's not fair. She stared at me, eyes calm but distant. You sound like a parent scolding a child. Then stop acting like one. Silence. Then. I think I want to spend a few days at Danny's. That was it. No yelling. No slamming doors. Just exit. As she packed a small bag, I stood in the hallway, wondering how we went from being the functional couple to whatever this was. Maybe we were never as functional as we thought. Maybe I was just better at pretending. Maya was gone for 4 days. Not far. Just across the city at Danny's apartment, but it felt like she was on another planet. I kept expecting to hear the front door creak open, the scent of eucalyptus oil trailing behind her, a soft "hey babe" as if nothing had happened. But each night passed with only silence and the low hum of my laptop as I worked late just to distract myself. We texted sparingly. Just logistics. She didn't say when she'd be back, and I didn't ask. The apartment felt hollow. Not just because of her absence, but because her energy, that floaty, chaotic, incense-infused essence, still lingered in every room. It was like living with a ghost who had only temporarily stepped out of her own haunting. On the 5th night, Sam called me. It was strange. We weren't exactly close outside of the group. Most of our interactions were couple-oriented double dates, birthday dinners, game nights. But he sounded weirdly eager to talk. Can we grab a beer? He asked. I didn't want to. But I was curious. And a little lonely. So I said yes. We met at this bar we used to go to a lot, the one with overpriced sliders and rotating craft beers. He looked worse than usual. Disheveled, tired, that kind of tired that isn't about sleep. After the usual pleasantries, he dropped it. Danny's not talking to me. At all. She blocked me yesterday. I nodded. That's rough. She told you, right? What happened? Yeah. He rubbed his face. It wasn't, like, I didn't mean for it to happen. It was one time. Just stupid. I was drunk and lonely and... Sam, I said gently, you don't need to justify it to me. He paused. She said you and Maya are going through something too. I stiffened. Sort of. He leaned back. Man, I don't get it. These women. They want us to be sensitive and open, and then when we slip, it's like we're monsters. I didn't respond. I just took a slow sip of my beer. Because part of me agreed, but another part, the louder part, was tired of men using the word slip to mean betrayal. Then he said something that stuck with me. You think Maya's coming back? I shrugged. I don't know. She always seemed like she had one foot out the door anyway. I bristled. She's not like that. He looked at me, then down at his glass. Okay. Maybe not. Just, it's hard to hold on to someone when they're always chasing something else. And I hated that I understood exactly what he meant. Maya came back the next day. No warning. I walked in from work and there she was, barefoot on the balcony, drinking tea and journaling. Hi, she said. Hey. A beat passed. I missed my plants, she added, like that explained everything. I didn't know what to say. So I said nothing. We settled into a new version of coexisting. She was physically present again, but emotionally? Still drifting. She offered no updates on her job search, because there wasn't one. The rent wasn't mentioned. The fridge was stocked mostly with herbal teas, chia pudding, and oat milk. Nothing real. Meanwhile, I was budgeting to the decimal. My checking account was dropping lower each week. I'd stopped ordering takeout. Cancelled a weekend trip with friends.
Maya didn't seem to notice. She was busy curating her inner garden. Her words, not mine. Then came the dinner. Danny invited us over.
No pressure, she said.
Just a small thing. Maybe it'll help to be around familiar faces. I hesitated. Maya was instantly enthusiastic.
It could be grounding, she said.
A reweaving of connections.
I didn't know what that meant, but I agreed. The night was awkward from the start. Danny had obviously gone all out: candles, music, a perfectly set table.
But Sam wasn't there. No explanation. Just an empty chair and a forced smile. Halfway through the meal, Danny excused herself.
We heard the sound of a door closing, not a bathroom door.
Then silence. Maya stood up without saying anything and followed.
I sat alone in the dining room, staring at half-eaten roasted vegetables.
20 minutes passed. I finally knocked on Danny's bedroom door. Everything okay? Maya opened it.
Her eyes were red. She's not doing well, she said quietly. It hit her harder than she thought.
I nodded. Okay. Should we go? I think she wants to be alone. But I'm going to stay a bit. Just sit with her. I left without another word.
That night, I slept on one side of our bed, the other side untouched.
Again. The next morning, Maya was home. Making tea. Humming.
She said nothing about the night before.
Neither did I.
A few days later, I came home early and found her on the couch, laughing at something on her phone. I walked past, glanced down.
It was a text. From Danny. I don't know what I would do without you. You're the only one who sees me. I didn't say anything.
But something shifted in me. Something small, but permanent.
A doubt I couldn't shake. After that text from Danny, I couldn't look at Maya the same.
It wasn't that I believed she was cheating, not exactly. But something about the intimacy in Danny's words, the timing of it all, made me feel like I was suddenly on the outside of a two-person secret. And the longer I stayed silent about it, the heavier it sat in my chest.
I told myself I was being paranoid.
That I was just projecting frustration about rent, stress at work, everything piling up. But it didn't help that Maya had started spending more time at Danny's again. She's still healing, she'd say.
She's a mess right now. And maybe that was true. But I was starting to feel like her mess didn't matter anymore.
My breaking point came when I got home from work one night and found Maya in our living room with Danny. They were laughing at something on Maya's phone. Sitting close, not inappropriately, but closer than they used to. I didn't even know Danny was coming over.
Oh hey! Maya said, grinning. We were watching those old videos from the cabin trip. I nodded, dropped my bag, and went to the kitchen.
From the other room, I could still hear their laughter. I opened the fridge: oat milk, ginger shots, leftover quinoa salad.
No actual food.
I closed it and leaned against the counter, breathing through my nose. Reminding myself that I was allowed to feel what I was feeling. That being uncomfortable didn't make me controlling. But when I walked back into the living room, Danny looked up and said something that sent me spinning. You know, she said casually, you should really try quitting your job too.
It changed Maya's whole energy. Maya giggled. He's too rational for that.
And they both looked at me like I was this lovable but outdated relic from a previous life.
I said nothing.
Just went to our bedroom and shut the door.
That night, I waited until Maya came to bed. Then I asked, "Are you in love with her?" She froze, mid-motion, one leg halfway into her pajama pants. What? You and Danny. Are you, together? Her brow furrowed. No. Of course not. Where is this coming from?
I stared at the ceiling. You spend more time with her than with me. She texts you like you're the only person she can breathe around.
And I haven't felt like your partner in weeks. Maya sat on the bed. She's going through something traumatic. I'm being a friend. Are you being honest with yourself? I asked. She didn't respond. And I didn't push it further. The next morning, she was gone again. Left a sticky note on the fridge. Went to Danny's. Be back tonight. Don't wait up. Yellow heart. That night, she didn't come back. I called her once. No answer. The next morning, she texted. Sorry. She had a panic attack. I stayed. I didn't reply. Instead, I stared at our bank account balance. Rent was due in a week. My card had declined that morning trying to buy coffee. I took a deep breath and called my sister. She picked up after 2 rings. Hey stranger, she said. Everything okay? Not really. I told her everything. The quitting. The rent. The emotional fog. Danny. The text. The sticky notes. She didn't interrupt. When I finished, there was a pause. Then. You're not crazy. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. And you're not selfish, she added. You're trying to build a life. She's trying to disappear into herself. That hit me hard. Because that was exactly what it felt like, that Maya had slowly been erasing herself from our shared life. And maybe that had started long before she quit her job. A few days later, I told Maya I needed a break. Not a breakup. Not yet. But space. I said I would stay at a friend's for a week. Let her have the apartment. Let her feel it, all of it, without me there absorbing the fallout. She looked stunned. You're leaving me, she asked. I'm not leaving, I said quietly. I'm stepping back. For what? To remember what it feels like to live with someone who respects boundaries. Who shares burdens. Who doesn't vanish when things get uncomfortable. Her mouth opened, then closed. I'll be back in a week, I said. And I left. The first night away was surreal. I stayed at my coworker Leo's place. Crashed on his couch. He gave me a beer, a burrito, and the Wi-Fi password. Said nothing else. It was the most peace I'd felt in weeks. The next morning, Maya sent me a long message. I'm sorry. I know I've been distant. I'm scared. I don't know who I am without structure. Danny makes me feel seen, but I don't want to lose you. I didn't realize how far away I'd gone. I didn't respond right away. I needed to know if she meant it or if it was just another wave in the ocean she was still trying to learn how to swim through. That night, Leo and I sat on his tiny balcony. He asked if I wanted advice. I said no. He gave it anyway. You don't need to decide tonight, he said. But eventually, you have to ask yourself, if she never changes, are you okay living like that? I didn't answer. Because I wasn't sure. But I was starting to realize the question mattered more than I'd been willing to admit. Staying at Leo's place was like hitting pause on a movie I wasn't sure I wanted to keep watching. He had one of those apartments that always smelled faintly like detergent and frozen pizza lived in, a little messy, but honest. The couch was stiff, the water pressure questionable, but it felt like a safe place to think. I hadn't realized how much I'd been suffocating in silence until I had space to breathe. No whispered affirmations in the morning. No herbal tea rituals. No glassy-eyed spiritual monologues. Just me, a borrowed Netflix password, and the dull hum of Leo's gaming headset from the next room. Maya texted me on the second night. I miss you. I'm journaling a lot. I think I'm understanding myself better. Danny says this space is important. She's proud of me for staying present. I didn't know how to respond to that. There was something oddly circular about her messages, like she was reporting on her own emotional growth, but not actually including me in it. I typed. I'm glad you're reflecting. I'm doing the same. And left it at that. By day 4, Leo and I had settled into a comfortable rhythm. He worked late, I worked remotely from his tiny dining table, and in the evenings we'd drink cheap beer and swap stories about the worst bosses we'd ever had. It wasn't deep, but it was solid. There was no emotional excavation,
no need to validate each other's feelings with sage smudging or moonwater. It felt good to just exist.
But Maya was still in my head.
And worse, so was Danny.
I hadn't told Leo the full story. Just that Maya and I were on a break.
But he was observant. One night, as he paused his game, he said,
"You think she's into her?" I blinked. "What?"
He gestured toward the general concept of Maya.
"The friend. The other one.
You've mentioned her like 3 times.
There's something there, right?" I didn't answer right away. "I don't know. Maybe emotionally. Maybe she doesn't even realize it." Leo shrugged. "Or maybe she does and you're the one who doesn't want to see it." I went to bed early that night. The week passed. I didn't rush back. Part of me hoped Maya would ask me to.
That she'd say, "I want to figure this out together."
But all I got were more abstract texts, like journal entries sent out of context. Had a dream about a house with no roof.
Danny says that symbolizes a need for openness.
I'm learning to breathe through discomfort instead of fixing it. I started a new vision board. The rent due date came and went. I paid the full amount again. She didn't even ask. On day 9, I packed my bag and went back to the apartment.
She was there. Sitting cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by crystals and candles.
She looked up. "I thought you'd be gone longer." I said a week. She nodded. "I know. Time's been strange." That was the beginning and end of our welcome. Over the next few days, things felt oddly polite.
We weren't arguing, but we weren't connecting either.
She gave me space, and I took it. We slept in the same bed but didn't touch.
We shared a kitchen but not meals. We orbited around each other like strangers in a coffee shop.
One night, I asked her directly, "Are you in love with Danny?" She didn't flinch.
Just stared at the mug in her hands. "I don't know what love feels like right now," she said quietly. "But I feel safe with her."
I nodded, throat tight. "And do you not feel safe with me?"
"It's not about safety," she said.
"It's about resonance." Resonance. I wanted to scream. Instead, I went for a walk. The next day, Danny showed up at our door. I opened it, surprised. She looked awkward. "I left something here, I think." "A sweater?" I stepped aside.
She moved through the apartment like she lived there, familiar, unhurried.
Maya wasn't home.
As she picked up a gray hoodie from the couch, she turned to me.
"She's not trying to hurt you, you know." "I know. She's just waking up."
I stared at her.
To what?
To herself. To everything she's repressed for so long.
I crossed my arms. "And you think that's a reason to walk out on the life we built together?" Danny held my gaze. "Sometimes the life we build isn't who we are. And sometimes loving someone means letting them find that out." Then she left. That night, Maya made us dinner. First time in weeks. It was lentil soup. She even lit candles. We sat across from each other, the silence thick. Finally, she said, "I'm not ready to be who you need me to be." I nodded. "And I'm not willing to keep pretending this works." She reached across the table. Touched my hand. "I still love you. Just, not in a way that knows how to stay." And I think that was the most honest thing she'd ever said. I didn't sleep that night. I lay awake thinking about the versions of ourselves we'd both been trying to protect. The dreamers. The builders. The ones who tried so hard to create a home in each other before figuring out who we were alone. And I knew what I had to do. The morning after that dinner, I woke up to the smell of incense and the quiet shuffle of Maya moving through the apartment. She wasn't avoiding me. But she also wasn't engaging. There was a mutual understanding now, a kind of truce, that we were both emotionally burned out. Neither of us had the energy to pretend anymore. I sat on the edge of the bed, listening to the clink of mugs in the kitchen.
Then I stood up, grabbed my hoodie, and walked out the door without saying a word.
I didn't know where I was going.
I ended up at a small park 2 neighborhoods over. It was early, the grass still dewy, and a group of older people were doing Tai Chi near the gazebo. I sat on a bench and just breathed. For the first time in days, I let myself feel everything.
No filtering. No explaining. Just raw, full-bodied grief.
Grief not for something that had suddenly ended, but for something that had slowly, agonizingly, unraveled while I watched, helpless.
Later that day, I emailed our landlord.
I told him I'd be moving out by the end of the month. We had 3 weeks left on the lease.
I'd pay my half. I'd clean the apartment.
I wouldn't leave Maya stranded, but I also wouldn't keep living in a space where I felt like a guest in my own home. When I told her that evening, she didn't cry.
She just nodded, lips tight. I understand, she said. I think. I knew this was coming.
I waited for the question, where will you go?
But it never came. Instead, she asked, can we at least try to part gently? I nodded. Yes. I'd like that. And I meant it.
The next few days were strangely peaceful.
We were polite, kind even. We packed things slowly. Cooked dinner once or twice.
Laughed lightly about old memories, like when we tried to put up IKEA shelves and nearly broke a pipe. It was like watching a slideshow of a relationship we both knew had already ended, but neither of us hated. One night, she found an old Polaroid of us at the beach.
She held it up. We were so aligned back then. Yeah, I said. But alignment isn't the same as growth. She put the photo in a small envelope and didn't say anything more. Leo offered me his spare room.
Temporarily, he said, until I figured things out.
You'll need space, he said. Not just physically, but mentally. He wasn't wrong. The day I moved out, Maya helped me carry boxes to the car. Danny was there too, standing back, holding a cardboard tray of coffee for all of us. She handed me a cup. No hard feelings? I gave her a look. None that I'll carry forward. She nodded. Maya stepped forward. We hugged, not long, not desperate. Just real. Thank you, she whispered. For everything. I didn't respond.
Because I didn't know how to say, I wish things had been different, but I'm still grateful. Living with Leo was a godsend.
Not because it fixed anything, it didn't. But because it gave me a pause. A real one. No incense. No forced emotional labor.
Just quiet evenings, bad action movies, and slowly restitching my sense of self.
Maya and I still texted, occasionally. Logistics, mostly. But one night she sent me a longer message. Danny and I are exploring something. It's slow. Honest. Scary. I didn't plan for this. But it feels like something I need to understand. I hope that's okay.
I stared at the message for a long time.
I didn't respond right away. Because, surprisingly, I didn't feel betrayed. Just released. I typed. Thank you for telling me. I hope you find what you're looking for. Truly. And I meant that, too. Weeks passed. Then a month. I found a new apartment. A studio.
Small, but mine. I bought furniture piece by piece. Ate cereal out of the pot the first week because I forgot to buy bowls.
It was lonely. It was peaceful. It was real.
One night, Leo and I sat on the floor of my new place, surrounded by IKEA debris.
Do you miss her? He asked. I thought about it. I miss the version of us that worked.
But I don't miss waiting for her to come back to the relationship.
He nodded. Closure is weird, I added. You think it's a door you shut. But sometimes it's just waking up and realizing you've already walked away.
He raised his beer.
To waking up. I clinked mine against his. Maya sent one last message a few weeks later. I'm starting a small art residency next month. I think I'm finally starting to create from a place that isn't panic.
I smiled when I read that.
Then I archived the thread. Not out of bitterness. Out of peace.
Starting over in a studio apartment at 32 wasn't how I imagined this chapter of my life.
I thought by now I'd be settled.
Maybe married, maybe talking about kids, or travel plans, or at least splitting groceries with someone I could come home to. Instead, I was assembling IKEA furniture alone, binge-watching comfort shows, and learning how to exist without revolving around another person.
The quiet was brutal at first. Then it became something close to sacred.
There's this moment post-breakup where the grief doesn't scream anymore.
It hums. I'd walk to the store and realize halfway there that I hadn't thought about Maya for hours.
I'd see something that reminded me of her, a type of incense, a song, someone carrying sunflowers, and feel the ache less like a wound and more like a bruise. You don't forget the shape of the relationship, but the sharpness fades. And with that space came something else, reflection I didn't rush.
Leo came by sometimes.
He helped me hang shelves, offered dating advice I didn't ask for, and occasionally crashed on my floor when his own apartment got too chaotic. One night, over takeout, he asked,
"You think you'll get back out there soon?" I shrugged. "Define soon." He laughed. "I mean, you're stable. Emotionally literate. Gainfully employed.
That puts you in, like, the top 5% of single men."
I smirked. Not sure that's a good thing or a tragic thing. He grinned.
Bit of both. But the truth was, I didn't feel ready. Not because I hadn't moved on from Maya, I had, mostly, but because I was still meeting myself again. I'd spent so long adjusting to her rhythm that I'd lost track of my own. Now, I was figuring out what I liked to cook when no one else was eating with me. What music I put on when I didn't need to share the speaker. What silence felt like when it wasn't a punishment. Then I saw Danny. It was random, a Sunday farmer's market I almost didn't go to. I was browsing through a stand of locally made candles when I heard my name. "Hey." She looked healthier. Lighter. Like she was breathing easier. We stood there awkwardly for a moment before I said, "Hey. You look well." She smiled. "Thanks. It's been a strange few months." "I bet." There was a beat of silence. Then she asked, "Would it be okay if we grabbed coffee sometime?" I hesitated. Not because I was angry, I wasn't, but because I didn't know what she wanted. Or what I wanted from her. Still, I said yes. We met later that week. It wasn't dramatic. No long speeches, no tears. Just two people sitting across from each other, acknowledging the strange overlap of their lives. She was still seeing Maya. "It's not what people think," she said. "It's messy. And slow. And uncertain." I nodded. "Sounds familiar." She stirred her tea. "I didn't mean to be part of what broke you too. I think we were both just looking for something Maya couldn't find with you, and I couldn't find with Sam." "I know," I said. She looked relieved. "Thank you for saying that. We didn't make plans to see each other again. It didn't feel necessary." By early fall, my apartment looked like someone lived there on purpose. Plants I hadn't killed yet. A record player I actually used. Books stacked in every corner. It was small, but it was full of things I chose. One afternoon, I took a walk with my sister. She'd come into town for a conference and insisted we catch up in person. We walked along the river, coffee cups in hand, and she asked the question that always came. "Have you talked to Maya?" I shook my head. "Not in a while." "Do you want to?" "I think I'd like to see her happy. But I don't need to be there to witness it." She smiled. "That's more growth than most people get in a year. Pain's a good teacher." "No kidding." We walked in silence for a while, the kind of silence that doesn't sting. Then she said, "You know, I never told you this, but I was always a little worried she'd pull you away from yourself." I raised an eyebrow. "Why?" "Because she made everything seem so beautiful, so soft, so elevated. And you were always trying to catch up to that." I don't think she ever realized you were enough just as you were.
I let that sit. It was kind. And hard to hear. But maybe true. That night, I lit one of the candles I'd bought at the market. Made a decent dinner.
Played a record I hadn't touched in months.
And I wrote. Not about Maya. Not about loss.
About the weird, quiet joy of starting over.
Of mornings where no one expects you to be anything but present. Of friendships that don't require fixing.
Of rent you pay alone, and the pride that comes with that.
It wasn't a happy ending. But it felt like a true one.
The weather started to shift, fall creeping in with its uneven moods, crisp mornings followed by humid afternoons. I liked walking then, taking different routes home from work just for the sake of it. There was something meditative about it. Side streets, falling leaves, headphones in, no one waiting on me, no one asking for anything. For the first time in a long while, solitude didn't feel like absence. It felt like space. One evening, I ran into an old coworker at the grocery store. Kara. We'd worked together at my first job out of college. She looked almost exactly the same, just slightly more polished, like time had gently refined her edges instead of eroding them. We hugged. Caught up. Exchanged numbers. 2 days later, she texted me, "Wanna get lunch next week?" I said yes. It wasn't a date. At least not technically. But it felt charged in a way I hadn't felt in a while, that fluttery awareness that you're being seen in a new way. We talked for 2 hours. About work. About exes. About books we kept meaning to finish. She told me about a relationship she just ended, one that had turned her into someone she didn't recognize. I nodded along. I knew that feeling too well. When the check came, she said, "Split it?" I laughed, more out of habit than humor. "What?" she asked. "Nothing. Just, that used to be a whole discussion in my last relationship." She smiled gently. "I don't need someone to pay for me. Just to show up." That stuck with me. Later that week, I got a call from Leo. He sounded off. "You free tonight?" he asked. "Yeah, what's up? Can you meet me?" I met him at the same bar where we'd talked the night I moved out. He looked worse than usual, tired in the way that doesn't come from lack of sleep. "My brother cheated on his wife," he said, after one sip of beer. I blinked. Jesus. Yeah. Been going on for a year. They have 2 kids. I sat back. "I'm sorry." He nodded. "You know what's wild?" He told me he was bored. Like, that was the whole reason. I didn't know what to say. He added, "I keep thinking about how close I came to being that guy. If my last relationship had lasted longer, if I hadn't gotten out." He trailed off. And I realized something I hadn't fully said aloud until then. I never felt bored with Maya. I felt exhausted. Like I was carrying something she didn't even see. Leo nodded. "That's worse, sometimes." That night, I dreamt of Maya. We were in our old apartment. It was full of plants, even more than when we lived there. But they were overgrown, vines covering the windows, ferns curling up the walls. She was trying to open a door, but the plants had wrapped around it. She kept saying, "I just need a minute." I kept telling her, "We don't have one." I woke up sweating. I didn't tell her about the dream. But I thought about her more after that. Not with longing, but with a kind of quiet curiosity. Wondering how she was. If Danny was still around. If she'd finished that art residency she mentioned. Part of me wanted to reach out. Another part, the wiser one, said, "Let silence do its work." Kara and I went out again. Still not a date. Still something like one. We talked more openly this time. She asked about Maya, about how it ended. I told her the basics, left out the messier details. But she read between the lines. "She sounds searching," she said. "She is," I agreed. "And you?" "I think I'm done searching. I think I'm building now." She smiled.
That's a good place to start from. I didn't know where things with Kara would go. Maybe nowhere. Maybe somewhere gentle.
But I liked who I was around her, grounded, light, not over-explaining everything I felt. There was no performative introspection.
Just presence. One night, she sent me a voice note.
I hope you know you didn't fail just because something ended.
Sometimes people walk different roads for a while. Doesn't mean the road was wrong. I played it twice. Then I saved it. One Saturday afternoon, I got a package. No return address. Inside, a small canvas. Acrylic. Abstract, but with colors I recognized. Turmeric yellow. Ocean blue. Charcoal gray. A note on the back. For the chapter that came before the next one. M.
I stared at it for a long time. Then I hung it on the wall above my desk.
Not as a reminder of loss. As proof that some endings are also offerings. The painting stayed on the wall.
I didn't know what it was supposed to represent, probably nothing specific, but it looked like some kind of emotional weather system, bold streaks, soft edges, a subtle chaos that somehow resolved itself into harmony.
It made sense that Maya painted it.
It made even more sense that she didn't sign it.
Every time I looked at it, I didn't think about what we lost. I thought about how hard we both tried. Kara and I started seeing each other more regularly.
There was no announcement.
No pressure. Just one text at a time. One coffee. One shared movie night. I liked that we didn't rush to define anything. It wasn't about labeling, it was about experiencing.
We kissed for the first time on her balcony, under a string of lights that swayed in the breeze.
No fireworks. No swelling music.
Just her hand resting against my chest and a kind of stillness I hadn't felt in years.
Afterward, she whispered, "You okay?" I smiled. Yeah. Just grateful. And I meant it.
A few weeks later, Maya texted me.
It was short. Would you be okay meeting for coffee? No pressure. Just want to check in. I stared at the message for a while.
I wasn't sure what she wanted, but I didn't feel dread, just curiosity. And maybe, under that, a small pull of something unfinished.
I replied. Sure. Next week okay? We met at a small cafe neither of us had ever been to. Neutral territory. She looked good. Different.
Her hair was shorter.
She was wearing boots I didn't recognize.
She smiled as I sat down.
Thanks for coming. Of course. For a moment, we just sipped our drinks. Then she said, I've been thinking about us a lot. I nodded. Me too.
I don't regret the break, she added.
But I regret not being more honest during it. With you. With myself. I waited.
She continued, I thought finding myself would be this beautiful, clean process.
But it was messy. I hurt people. I drifted.
I confused change with escape.
That line hit me.
I said, I think you were searching for silence, but forgot I was still there in the noise.
She looked down. Yeah. That's exactly it.
We didn't rehash the past beyond that.
We didn't talk about Danny. Or rent.
Or the arguments we never finished. We just sat there, two people who had shared something real and lost it, without trying to resurrect what couldn't be revived. Before we left, she said, you seem more centered.
I am. She nodded. Good. I'm glad.
Then she hugged me.
Brief, warm, not bittersweet.
And just like that, we parted gently.
That weekend, I visited my parents.
We hadn't seen each other in months, and I'd been dodging their questions about how things were going.
But now I had answers. Over dinner, my mom asked about Maya.
We're not together anymore, I said simply.
My dad raised an eyebrow. You okay? I am now. They didn't press further.
Later, my mom brought out an old photo album. One of those oversized ones with plastic sleeves and faded edges. She flipped to a page from when I was 8, a picture of me sitting on the floor, building a Lego set with complete focus. "You always wanted things to fit just right," she said. I laughed. "Still do. But you've learned not everything clicks into place perfectly," she added. I looked at the photo again. My younger self, so sure that if I followed the instructions, everything would work. "I'm learning," I said. Kara met my sister a week later. They clicked immediately, bonding over a shared love of weird documentaries and a mutual dislike for brunch lines. Afterward, my sister pulled me aside. "She's cool," she said. "I like that she doesn't need you to be a poet about your feelings. Just honest." "She's grounded," I replied. "And she doesn't make you perform your growth." That part stuck with me. I was folding laundry one night, real domestic bliss, when I got another unexpected message. This time, from Sam. "Hey. I know we haven't talked. Just wanted to say I heard about everything. You handled it with a kind of grace I didn't. Respect." That was all. I stared at the message. Then deleted it. Some people didn't need to be part of your healing. I started volunteering at a local community kitchen on weekends. It wasn't some grand moral mission. I just wanted to do something that wasn't about me. Something tactile. I'd chop vegetables, stack trays, clean counters. Simple. Quiet. One of the coordinators, a retired nurse named Lucille, said, "You're good at listening." That's rare. I didn't say it, but it was something Maya used to say too. Only now, I wasn't listening just to be needed. I was listening because it felt good to be present without being consumed. On a quiet night, I opened my journal, something I'd picked up again recently. I wrote, "There's no glory in burning out to hold a relationship together. Love without balance becomes burden. And boundaries aren't walls, they're invitations to meet each other in healthy space." I paused. Then added, "I'm still learning what it means to show up for myself, and for someone else. But I know now it has to start with presence, not performance." I closed the journal. The painting still hung above my desk. It didn't haunt me. It held me a little. A reminder not of what ended, but what unfolded. The last time I saw Maya was at an art show. It was a small gallery downtown, one of those spaces that used to be a hardware store or a dry cleaner, now filled with curated abstraction and free wine in plastic cups. I hadn't planned on going. A friend had an extra ticket. I said yes without checking the details. And there she was. Hair shorter again. A woven scarf draped loosely around her shoulders. Talking to a couple near a canvas I could instantly tell was hers. I froze for a second. Then caught her eye. She smiled wide, genuine. She walked over. "Didn't expect to see you here," she said. "Same," I replied. She nodded toward the painting. "That one's mine." I figured. It was textured, layered. Lots of blues and ochres. In the center, a single thin crack of red. "It's called fault line," she said. I raised an eyebrow. "Subtle." She laughed. "It's about change. How things shift underneath us even when everything looks stable on the surface." I glanced back at the canvas. "Yeah. I get that." We didn't talk much after that. A hug, brief and warm. A soft goodbye. That was enough. 6 months later, I turned 33. Kara planned something small. Just a few friends, a homemade dinner, a playlist we built together. She bought me a plant, a fiddle leaf fig, with a tiny tag that read, "Something that grows with you." It sat by the window now, healthy, reaching for the light. She was never loud in her gestures. But they always landed. That night, after everyone left, we sat on the floor and shared a pint of ice cream. She looked at me and said, "You seem really settled." I nodded. "I feel that way. Or at least, grounded." She leaned into me. "That's rare." I found a voice memo from Maya a few weeks later. "I don't know how I missed it. It was from months ago, buried in my inbox.
I listened. Hey. I'm not sure if this will reach you, or if you'll even want to hear it, but thank you. For loving me when I didn't know how to love myself. For holding steady when I wavered. I'm not looking for a response. Just wanted to say, I hope wherever you are, you feel free.
I hope you're becoming who you always were underneath everything.
I saved it. Not to relive it.
Just to remember that people can still leave pieces of themselves behind in soft ways.
Kara and I took a weekend trip to the mountains. No agenda. No Wi-Fi.
Just books, a fireplace, and too much coffee.
On the second morning, we hiked a short trail that led to a clearing overlooking a small valley.
We stood there, quiet, watching fog burn off the hills. She reached for my hand. I don't need promises, she said.
Just presence.
I looked at her, heart thudding.
I can give you that, I said. And I meant it. That spring, I started painting.
It felt absurd at first.
I didn't know what I was doing.
But I remembered watching Maya, how she didn't always paint to express something.
Sometimes she painted to discover it.
So I bought cheap brushes.
Acrylics. A small easel I could fold up when guests came over. I didn't post any of it. Didn't show Kara right away. It wasn't for display. It was for me. I ran into Danny once.
She was alone, leaving a bookstore.
We smiled, nodded. She didn't stop, and neither did I.
But there was no tension.
Just acknowledgement.
Like two people who had once been satellites in the same orbit and now had settled into their own gravity.
Maya's painting still hung above my desk. I thought about taking it down once. Replacing it. But I didn't. Because it didn't feel like a wound anymore.
It felt like a chapter marker. A flag planted in the soil of who I used to be.
One night, Kara asked me if I believed in closure. I thought about it.
I don't think closure is something that happens all at once, I said.
It's not a finish line.
It's more like the quiet that settles when you stop trying to make noise out of silence.
She nodded slowly. That makes sense.
Then she smiled.
I think you're finally writing the story you were meant to. And I realized she didn't mean literally. She meant my life. So here it is. Not a cautionary tale. Not a tragedy. Not even a redemption arc. Just a story about a boy who loved someone who didn't know how to stay.
About a girl who needed to leave to figure out who she was. And about the long, slow, honest work of becoming whole again.
Alone. And eventually, joyfully, not.